Chapter 1. Beneath the Crown. 1965. Perspective. General Milosovec Prokletstvo. The fire crackled softly in Tito's private study, but it did little to ease the tension settling in my chest. Outside, Belgrade was buried under sheets of snow, a stark contrast to the oppressive warmth inside. The heat had nothing to do with the fire, though. It was the weight of what I had to propose, the enormity of the future we were about to shape. I stood by the window, my hands clasped tightly behind my back, my posture as rigid as it always had been. Years of military discipline had trained me to stand tall, even when faced with situations like this. I could feel the heat from the fire prickling at my skin, but it wasn't the warmth that made my heart race. Across the room, John Bauer sat comfortably in one of Tito's plush chairs, a glass of whiskey swirling lazily in his hand. His eyes, cold and calculating, scanned the room with the practiced indifference of a man who had been here before, who had pulled the strings of power from behind the scenes more times than I could count. CIA, always thinking 2 steps ahead. It was just another negotiation to him, another deal to be brokered. Closer to the fire was Victoria Baumgartner. There was something about the way she carried herself, poised and silent, that unnerved me. Her dark dress caught the flickering light, making her seem even more enigmatic. She was a master at this game, far more adept at maneuvering in these kinds of circles than even Bauer. While he was good at manipulation, Victoria wielded her influence quietly, calculating every move. She was dangerous, and I knew it. Bauer might have been here to offer Tito a solution, but it was Victoria who held the real power in this room tonight. Then the door creaked open, and Josip Broz Tito entered, leaning heavily on his cane. I felt a pang of unease as I saw him. The man who had once been the powerful, larger-than-life leader of Yugoslavia was now a shadow of his former self. His shoulders, once broad, had hunched with age, and illness had diminished his frame. Yet when his eyes found mine, they were as sharp and commanding as ever. Age hadn't taken his mind from him.
General,
Tito greeted me, his voice rough but steady.
You've brought company.
I turned from the window and straightened my posture, giving a sharp nod. Mr. President, these are trusted allies. I gestured toward Bauer and Victoria. We're here to discuss the future of Yugoslavia. Tito's gaze narrowed, and he made his slow, deliberate way to the chair by the fire.
I am still the leader of this country, Milosovec. Don't speak as if I'm already gone.
There it was, the resistance I had expected. I replied carefully, keeping my tone steady. Of course not, sir, but time is not on our side. Tito lowered himself into the chair with a deep sigh, his body sinking into the leather as though the weight of the world had finally caught up with him.
Time,
he muttered,
is never on anyone's side.
His eyes shifted toward Bauer.
What is it you want, Bauer? You always want something.
I watched as Bauer leaned forward, setting his whiskey glass down on the table. There was no warmth in his smile, just that cold efficiency I had come to expect.
Mr. President, I'm not here to ask for something. I'm here to offer a solution.
Tito raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed.
A solution to what?
This was the moment. I could feel the room tense around me as Bauer prepared to deliver his pitch. But to my surprise, it wasn't Bauer who spoke next.
Nightshade.
Victoria's voice cut through the tension like a knife. Her tone was soft, but the effect was immediate. All eyes turned to her, and even Tito seemed intrigued. She didn't flinch under his gaze, her calm demeanor betraying nothing.
The project that will secure Yugoslavia's future.
Tito leaned forward slightly, his brow furrowing.
Nightshade?
Victoria offered a small, knowing smile.
It's a plant, Mr. President. Deadly nightshade, or Atropa belladonna. A powerful poisonous plant with a dual nature. In small doses, it creates hallucinations, vision so real that the mind can't tell the difference between reality and fantasy. The victim becomes dependent on it, consumed by the illusion it creates. But in larger doses, it kills, slowly, quietly. The body relaxes, the heart rate increases, and the victim asphyxiates without realizing they're dying.
The room fell into a deep silence, broken only by the soft crackle of the fire. I watched Tito's expression carefully as he took in her words. His eyes never left her, and I could see the wheels turning in his mind.
And you think this, Nightshade, is a fitting metaphor for the future of this country?
Tito asked, his voice low, almost wary. Victoria's smile widened, though it remained cold and calculated.
I think it's the perfect metaphor for what we're offering you. Control. In small doses, the project will extend your influence, your power, without anyone knowing the full extent of it. In larger doses, it becomes a tool to reshape the future. But the beauty of it, Mr. President, is that it remains entirely under your control.
I could feel the shift in the room as she spoke. Victoria had Tito's full attention now, and there was something unsettling about the way she had guided the conversation so effortlessly. She had coined the term Nightshade, crafted the metaphor with such ease that it made me wonder just how long she had been planning this. Tito's fingers tapped lightly on the armrest of his chair.
And what exactly is this project?
Cloning.
Bauer replied smoothly, picking up where Victoria left off.
Genetic manipulation. We've made breakthroughs, Mr. President. Breakthroughs that could allow us to preserve your legacy indefinitely. Imagine your leadership, your influence, continuing long after you're gone. A line of successors, each carrying your genetic code, your knowledge, your vision.
Tito's eyes narrowed further, a flicker of suspicion crossing his face.
You want to create a copy of me?
Not just a copy,
Bauer answered.
a legacy. A way to ensure that Yugoslavia remains strong, independent, and united. With the right resources, Dr. Ian Campbell and Frederick Novak can take their research to the next level. But we need your approval, and we need your funding.
Tito's silence was long and heavy. His eyes shifted from Bauer back to Victoria, and for a moment, I could see the internal struggle playing out in his mind. He was a man who had built his country from the ground up, who had spent his life keeping it united. But he also knew that the moment he was gone, the cracks would start to show.
And you believe this is the way forward?
Tito asked Victoria directly, his voice quieter now. Victoria leaned forward, her expression steady.
Without this project, Yugoslavia will fall apart within a decade of your passing. Your successors will tear it apart, fighting for power. But with Nightshade, you can ensure that only those worthy of your legacy will lead.
The fire crackled softly as Tito sat in thought, his breathing labored but his mind sharp as ever. I watched him closely, waiting for the decision. He had spent his life making choices that would shape history, and this was no different. The weight of the future rested on his shoulders.
And what happens if it fails?
Tito finally asked, his voice softer, almost resigned. Bauer glanced at me before responding.
It won't fail. And if it does, we'll shut it down. But you won't be around to see that, Mr. President. This is about securing your place in history, ensuring that Yugoslavia doesn't crumble without you.
The silence stretched on once more.
Leave me with my thoughts.
My ailing friend, my leader indeed had a lot to think about.